Good evening. Thank you for joining us. I'm Sarah Sanchez. Gina Lamont has the night off. We'll start tonight with the latest COVID-19 numbers for Riverside County and the Coachella Valley. Now, the county doesn't update numbers on weekends, so this is a three-day total. 1,049 new cases were reported in Riverside County. Only 207 of those, though, were from the valley. 12 new deaths were reported countywide, and one was from our valley. Hospitalizations and active cases are down in the last week. And take a look at this. This is a graph showing the number of daily cases in Riverside County. You can see the line trending downwards for the last couple of weeks. Right now, we're hovering between 200 and 400 new cases a day. That's much better than the 700 and 800 we were seeing just a few weeks ago. And this graph shows the positivity rate for the county. We're currently bouncing back and forth between 8 and 10%. Again, a welcome change from numbers in the teens that were reported earlier in the month. Last week, Governor Gavin Newsom delivered some good news for the state of California. Officials say it's all about looking ahead to getting the state back up and running. Governor Newsom has a new approach, and that's a color code 4-tier plan. Here it is, from worst to best case scenario. You can see the different tiers here. The color purple means widespread closures. That's where Riverside County is right now. Red means substantial closures with some non-essential indoor businesses closed. Orange is moderate. Some businesses will reopen. And yellow is minimal, meaning most businesses will open, but with modifications. Riverside County remains in the strictest reopening category. That was tier 1. But Eisenhower Health has some good news for us tonight. They say our positive cases are declining here locally, and they're now lower than what they projected at the start of the pandemic. Olivia Sandusky joins us live now with more. Olivia.
Sarah, you can really see that in the chart that Eisenhower created. They made a few scenarios back in April of what COVID may look like here in the Coachella Valley. This blue line, that was their better case projection. And today you can see that red bar right there, right underneath the curve. And experts tell me they think these numbers can continue decreasing if we follow those precautions.
Doctors at Eisenhower Medical Center remain positive as coronavirus cases steadily drop in Riverside County and the Coachella Valley.
We're definitely seeing a very favorable trend in the number of cases that are in the hospital today. In fact, we're down under 20 cases in the hospital from our peak at over 90 in July.
This decline comes after a second round of closures and a statewide mask order.
I definitely see more and more use of masks, more and more social distancing. It seems that most folks are heeding the advice to continue to protect themselves.
There's now 3 tiers.
Governor Newsom recently released a color-coded system to track reopenings across the state. Despite reporting lower case numbers, Riverside County remains in the purple widespread category, which has a positivity rate higher than 8% and more than 7 positive new cases a day per 100,000 residents.
90% of the counties in the state are at the purple level. Given the criteria that the governor has, we're still going to be a little bit before we get to the next level.
That level is called substantial and opens more non-essential indoor businesses. It also requires a positivity rate between 5 and 8%.
They review the numbers every Tuesday, so by next Monday we want to be at the good level, and then the clock starts, and then for 2 weeks after that, if we're still in those good numbers, then we can potentially go into the red.
Even one day of high case numbers can restart the clock. But Dr. Williamson says the next level isn't too far out of reach.
I think we're on a good trajectory right now. We just need you to continue to be diligent in protecting yourself and your community from this virus.
Dr. Williamson was the approaching Labor Day weekend. He's urging the Coachella Valley to continue wearing a mask and staying distant, as we typically have seen a rise in cases after holiday weekends. Olivia Sandusky, NBC Palm Springs.
All right. Thank you, Olivia. Starting today, indoor malls, barber shops, hair salons can reopen indoor operations in Riverside County. It all has to be in accordance, though, with new guidance from the state. Malls can also reopen for indoor business at 25% capacity. Westfield Palm Desert says essential businesses, outdoor dining, and stores with outside entrances are fully open. And of course, curbside service is available. With salons in the county getting the green light to reopen today, many are excited to resume operations. But as our Nico Payne found out, one local hair salon owner had some challenges to overcome before welcoming guests back.
Jeanette Charnay is the owner of J. Charnay Salon, which has been around for 30 years. We chatted with Charnay back in July, and she was frustrated that she couldn't transition to outdoor operations amid triple-digit temperatures. Her clientele is a bit older, and her services are more involved than a simple haircut. But after Governor Newsom announced the state's new reopening plan, she's now excited to reopen with new safety modifications in place.
Finally, every day we waited for that announcement, and finally we got it. Then my phone started exploding. Everyone started calling, and I'm like, yes, here we go.
Charnay will open her doors again starting September 1st, but she admits it has been difficult.
A lot of the struggles encompass just the people, including the people that work here. I've lost about half our people. Some people had the ability to go join family in other states. I had another person decide that they didn't want to work in a salon anymore.
But after overcoming the obstacles, Charnay is ready to welcome customers back with a fresh look for her salon.
We remodeled the whole salon. We downsized, we let go of 1,000 square feet and just used our space as positively as we could.
Another big change, a sign of the times, J. Charnay will be appointments only to start.
We're not accepting walk-ins right now. We want to see how this pans out. If people do call in, and we can screen them over the phone like before, and be sure that they've quarantined and followed the rules, then we'll make an appointment for them.
Reporting in Palm Desert, I'm Nico Payne, NBC Palm Springs.
AstraZeneca has started phase 3 clinical testing of its coronavirus vaccine candidate in the U.S. The drug maker says the trial will enroll up to 30,000 adults at 80 sites across the country. 2/3 of the participants will receive an experimental vaccine. The rest, a placebo. The company says results are expected later this year. Now, the FDA could authorize emergency use of a COVID-19 vaccine before phase 3 trials are even over. The FDA commissioner says if a vaccine developer applies for approval before the end of phase 3, the FDA could authorize it. He said the agency would have to determine the benefit outweighs the risk. Some doctors have expressed concern that just before Election Day, President Trump might pressure the FDA to approve a coronavirus vaccine before it's ready. The World Health Organization says an emergency authorization of COVID-19 vaccines must be based on high scientific and ethical standards.
The approval of a vaccine must be based on data from phase 3 clinical trials. There are well-described criteria which talk about the minimum efficacy that would be needed. We'd like to see a vaccine with at least 50% efficacy, preferably higher.
After the head of the FDA's comments and Russia's vaccine approval before tests are complete, many experts have expressed skepticism without data from large pivotal trials. Several colleges are testing wastewater for traces of COVID-19. More than 280 students at Utah State are in quarantine and being tested. Tests there have revealed their wastewater contained traces of the virus. The University of Arizona began testing wastewater back in April before students had returned to campus, and they found traces of coronavirus in the water, and testing led to the discovery of 2 cases in students living there. They were isolated, and the large-scale outbreak was prevented. With most local schools moving education fully online, technical problems, of course, are expected. But for some schools in the Valley, they're being hit with issues they didn't necessarily expect. Our Kitty Alvarado joins us live at College of the Desert with more. Kitty.
That's right. From malware attacks to students behaving badly, we spoke with experts who tell us they're doing everything they can to stop the bad actors.
Learning is on another level now that it's all online, and it requires a lot of vigilance from schools and parents. College of the Desert's computer infrastructure suffered a malware attack. A COD spokesperson says their main learning platform is working, but students tell us they're still having issues. COD would not give details on the attack, but Kevin Puckett, an IT professional, says these attacks are not after personal data. They're ransomware that target people to gain access to the system.
Once in their systems, it's basically like changing the locks to your house. They lock you out of your own system and demand ransom to pay for it.
He says this is becoming a lot more common, and it's big business.
It's not just a bunch of kids playing around anymore. This is a for-profit business that targets institutions that have money to pay for it.
The amount can range from hundreds to millions of dollars, depending on the institution or business.
They know basically to try and get into a sweet spot where they know it's in their best interest to just pay it.
And on a smaller scale, local schools are dealing with technical issues of their own. Eduardo Rivera with the Palm Springs Unified School District says they've resolved most of their issues with better systems and training.
We do prepare our teachers for certain settings to make sure that their kiddos are safe.
Desert Sands Unified School District says some students are misbehaving during class time. PSUSD says teachers have access to the students' screens to be able to stop bad behavior.
It adds a little extra accountability. You can, it shows how many tabs they have open. It sees if they're on YouTube when they should be doing something else, just like in the classroom.
Puckett says everyone must be on their A game to catch bad actors.
It's what keeps us Hollis IT guys in business. It's a never-ending battle.
Now, College of the Desert does tell us that most of the issue students are having now is adding or dropping classes and even having to pay for classes. But they say students should not worry that they will be not charged penalty fees, and very soon they will be able to access all of the online services. Reporting live from Palm Desert, Kitty Alvarado, back to you in the studio.
Coronavirus coverage brought to you by East Valley COVID-19 testing site, serving residents of eastern Coachella Valley.
Taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente casino cam in Rancho Mirage. Oof. We're going to send things over to NBC Palm Springs Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett to explain. Mike, why is it so hazy out there?
That's actually a big part of our weather story today. On paper, today would have been a phenomenal day. Once again, temperatures running delightfully below average, very similar to what we saw over the weekend, except for one problem. We had easterly flow today. In fact, we had some southerly flow as well. Look at that, 9 miles an hour from the southeast, helping to tell that story that pushed a lot of that humidity in from the Imperial Valley today, thus rising humidity up into that 20-30% level. If we had this temperature and got that humidity down to about 9%, it would have been a phenomenal day today, but instead it had that muggy kind of feel to it. Still, not complaining. 102 for this time of year is spectacular. The average is about 105, 106, so that's some good stuff there. We did have the opportunity to see some of that moisture manifested itself as some storms this afternoon. In fact, if you looked off towards the west today, especially towards the southwest today, we saw some really towering cumulus. Looked like it was going to bring us some of that beneficial rain, but looked like it didn't have enough available moisture to really become turbulent and bring us any storms here. In fact, it's just wound down to about nothing now. Speaking of which, it looks like high pressure is going to build across the west, and that's going to take cloud potential and storm potential down to almost zero. There is the possibility of seeing some monsoonal flow returning this week, but with this weekend, but doesn't look like it's going to happen during the week. What will happen during the week is the next 3 days, brought to you by Comfort Air, shows those temperatures popping back up above average on Tuesday, above 110 on Wednesday, and then that ridge of high pressure is going to expand all the way across the west. We got a good old-fashioned heat wave moving in for the 1/3 of the country this weekend. I'll give you the details and your full forecast in just a few minutes.
A rough weekend across the valley with several shootings. The Riverside County Sheriff's Department says a 16-year-old was shot in the head last night on Avenida de Plata in Coachella. Detectives found several shell casings at the scene and bullet holes in 2 nearby cars. Right now, no arrests have been made. And in Indio, a man was found outside a car with a gunshot wound. This happened around 2 in the morning Saturday in the area of Sundial and Solano. The victim died at the scene. You may have seen smoke from a fire in Indio. A motorcycle caught fire. No word on when it started, though. It was in the area of Avenue 45 in Jackson. We don't know if anyone was seriously injured. A backup on the overpass at Bob Hope and Interstate 10 after a crash involving a sports car and a big rig. Investigators say this was a chase involving that smaller car there. No word yet on why the chase started, but apparently the driver got into the path of the oncoming rig. The semi hit it near the access road to the interstate. Deputies arrested 3 people in the car. Too much water and too fast, leaving several vehicles completely submerged. It happened right here in the desert when an RV hit a fire hydrant. This video was shared by a viewer. Low-lying spots in the parts of the parking lot at that shopping center quickly flooded. The hydrant was shooting water about 30 feet into the air. You can see the water rising quickly to the bottoms of some of those vehicles, flooding them out. This happened near Washington and Varner Trail. In the end, aside from the damage to personal property, no one was hurt. Now for the fires burning in Northern California, an update for you tonight. Firefighters are making a lot of progress. The SCU and LNU Lightning Complex fires are both a little more than 60% contained, and combined, they've burned about 760,000 acres. The CZU Lightning Complex fire is 39% contained. It has burned nearly 85,000 acres. Coming up after the break, tensions rise across the country, social unrest coming to a head. Several politicians are now criticizing the president for his handling of the situation. The mayor of Kenosha is asking him not to visit their city, and the mayor of Portland is blaming the last 4 months of protests on the president. We'll have all those comments coming up. Protests for equality continue across the country, and now many of these demonstrations have led to political clashes turning violent very quickly. Fringe groups on both sides of the political spectrum are now mobilizing. Dre Gray has more.
Across the country, protests literally turning into political battlegrounds, with President Trump blaming what he calls radical left mayors and governors for the violence and promising law and order ahead of a Tuesday trip to Kenosha, Wisconsin, despite the mayor there urging him to stay away.
The wave of violence and destruction that we've seen in recent weeks and months has occurred in cities exclusively controlled and dominated by the Joe Biden party.
The president at one point seemingly defending 17-year-old Kyle Rittenhouse, who faces murder charges after killing 2 people, injuring a third during a confrontation in Kenosha.
He was trying to get away from them, I guess, it looks like, and he fell, and then they very violently attacked him.
This afternoon, Democratic nominee Joe Biden condemning violence on both sides.
An incumbent president who sows chaos rather than providing order.
And blaming the president and his followers for the growing unrest.
He may believe mouthing the words law and order makes him strong, but his failure to call on his own supporters to stop acting as an armed militia in this country shows how weak he is.
For those most affected by the shootings and chaos, the issue is much bigger and runs much deeper than conservative or liberal politics.
We're really just sick and tired of the violence. We're tired of it. We don't want to see more of it. We want to see change. That's what we want.
As unfortunately, the anger and violence seems to be growing. Jay Gray, NBC News.
Portland's mayor is accusing President Trump of fueling deadly unrest in the city. He spoke Sunday, a day after a person was shot and killed in Portland. It happened during an evening of violent clashes between protesters denouncing police brutality and supporters of the president.
Do you seriously wonder, Mr. President, why this is the first time in decades that America has seen this level of violence? It's you who have created the hate and the division.
In responding tweets, President Trump calls the mayor wacky and a fool. He says the people of Portland want law and order. Well, we'll be right back after the break. Mike has a look at our forecast back here at home. Mike.
Hi, Sarah. We're tracking a gorgeous afternoon. Depending on which direction you're looking, we see a lot of that mist off towards the northern end of the valley, some beautiful blue skies off towards the southern and the western end. We are tracking less humidity, but temperatures will be going up this week as high pressure builds across the west. We'll take a look together when we come back.
Across the country, protests literally turning into political battlegrounds, with President Trump blaming what he calls
Welcome back and a happy Monday to you. This is a live look courtesy of our Walter Clark 111 cam. As we were mentioning earlier, it was really a matter of perspective today. If you looked off in one direction, beautiful blue skies out there, but you could see at the lower levels, there was a lot of mist out there today. Not necessarily mist in the rain sense, just humidity. You could feel it today. Kept it from being an otherwise perfect afternoon. Temperatures well below average today. Speaking of numbers, 22 days until the first day of fall, as you and I both know. That's that magical day when temperatures just drop and everything becomes wonderful again. Okay, that's not true, but at least it gives us something psychological to hold on to there. In fact, today is the last day of meteorological summer. Tomorrow would be the first day of meteorological fall. We'll talk about that in a moment. Just bear with me one moment here. It worked in the 70s. There we go. Here's what we're taking a look at as far as what the future holds for us. High pressure that's sitting conveniently above the Pacific right now is what has been giving us these cool temperatures. The weekend was fantastic, right? Well, the heat will return midweek here. Jet stream will pull away from us and head way back up north again. In fact, let me show you. As that ridge makes its way further towards the east here, it's going to set up shop almost entirely over top of Nevada and parts of California as well. What this means is a widespread heat wave. In fact, temperatures will run about 6 to 12 degrees above normal for everybody, not just us. So we're talking about more highs being challenged, heat-related illness in places where they're not used to being hot. I'm talking to you, Boise. High fire danger. We finally just got some of those fires, especially in Northern California, under control. Well, it's going to get hot and dry again. And of course, air quality always goes down whenever it gets hot as well. So we put the big picture into motion here. We've got that low just sitting there spinning right off of Washington there. If we could keep that, that would be wonderful. But nope, the jet stream's going to push that further off towards the east there, and that will allow that high pressure to build. Look at that. There's nothing out into the Pacific, one of the hallmark signatures of high pressure. We had a little bit of excitement off towards our south and west today. If you looked up in that direction, just a little bit towards the south of La Quinta, big cumulus cloud formed up there. And I was thinking for a minute that it had potential to come down, but then it just didn't look like it had available moisture to survive once it came into the lower elevations there. Dropped some rain, but not for us. We could really use some. It's been a while. Almanac for today, 104. Again, on paper, we looked fantastic. 105 is the 30-year average for this time of year. Record for today is 118, but because of that humidity, we were warm in the early morning hours, and our feels-like temperature ran closer to about 110 today than 104. Here's what we're looking at as we go through the rest of the week. It looks like we will ride in that moderate range, about 50 to 55 as far as dew points go, 20 to 25 as far as relative humidity goes, but it will be drier for the rest of the week. We're not going to see any cumulus clouds over the mountains. Currently 100 in Desert Hot Springs, 97 Coachella, 89 in the Yucca Valley. We've got that easterly flow continuing that will switch around to the northwest tonight and allow temperatures to drop. We're going to make our very best effort at some upper 70s on Tuesday morning, and then we'll ramp ourselves up to 108 in Palm Springs, 109 in Indio, 102 in Joshua Tree, and some 70s up in Big Bear. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows very little comfort on the horizon. We pop above 110 on Wednesday. We return to the 1-teens on Friday and stay there through Monday.
Welcome back. I'm Olivia Sandusky. Let's get into your sports headlines for tonight. It was a crazy final day at the BMW Championship. The top 30 golfers move on to the Tour Championship next week, the finale of the FedEx Cup playoffs. The winner of the playoffs, they take home $15 million. Today's tournament came down to the wire. First up, Dustin Johnson. You'll see that second right here. A beautiful putt on 18 to force a playoff. A classic double breaker, changing direction twice before going down. Oh my gosh, it takes forever to reach the hole, but when it does, it's beautiful. Coaxes it in, sinks that putt. Then on the first playoff hole, Jon Rahm has this 66-footer for birdie. He drills it, one-upping the impressive putt Johnson had just made. Johnson would then miss his birdie putt. Rahm takes the win. You see it going right there. We'll see both of them next week for the Tour Championship. If you're a Padres fan and you don't recognize the roster after today's trade deadline, don't worry, you're not alone. They're trying to bolster their lineup for a potential playoff run. The Padres have one of the best records in the majors, but are second in the West, of course, behind the Dodgers. Let's break down the moves the Padres made today. First, on Saturday, they traded for closer Trevor Rosenthal to solidify the bullpen. Then yesterday, they acquired slugger Mitch Moreland to fill in as a DH. They added veteran catcher Jason Castro from the Angels as well. Now, last night in a blockbuster 7-player trade with the Mariners, they landed catcher Austin Nola. The Padres sent away their top prospect, Taylor Trammell, in that deal. Then today, right before the trade deadline, that got crazy, the Padres landed the top starting pitcher available, Mike Clevinger. He's from the Indians. That deal involved 9 different players, with the Padres sending several young prospects away. In total, the Padres have acquired 9 players. They traded away 15. They are going to be fun to watch the rest of the season. They wrap up a 3-game set with the Rockies tonight. First pitch in just a few minutes. Now over to day 1 of the U.S. Open. Looks a little different this year with no fans up in the stands. Some big names taking the court today, though. Women's #1 seed Karolina Pliskova was the first match of the day. She won in straight sets. American sensation Coco Gauff looking to build on her performance last year, but unfortunately she won't make it out of the first round, losing to Anastasia Sevastova. Tonight, men's #1 seed is Novak Djokovic, and women's #4 seed Naomi Osaka are in action on Arthur Ashe Court. And on a sadder note today, legendary Georgetown head coach John Thompson has passed away. Thompson led Georgetown to its only national title in 1984 and coached some of the biggest names in the sport, including Patrick Ewing, Alonzo Mourning, and Allen Iverson. He was the first black head coach to win a major collegiate championship when Georgetown took the title in 1984. Coach Thompson was 78 years old. That does it for sports. Coming up next, we'll revisit today's top stories, including local coronavirus numbers and hospitalizations that are going down, as well as some technical issues for several schools, including College of the Desert. Plus, cleanup efforts that are underway in Louisiana after the state was devastated by Hurricane Laura. We'll hear from residents who say it could take months to get back to normal.
Riverside County remains in the strictest reopening category, but doctors at Eisenhower Medical Center say our COVID-19 cases are trending in the right direction. The numbers are actually lower than the medical center's better case scenario projection. The hospital's chief medical officer says distancing and masks have played an important role in that trend.
We're definitely seeing a very favorable trend in the number of cases that are in the hospital today. In fact, we're down under 20 cases in the hospital from our peak at over 90 in July.
Dr. Williamson says the upcoming Labor Day weekend is a concern, though. Almost every summer holiday has been followed by a spike in cases, and a jump could prevent the county from moving to the next level quickly. With most local schools moving education fully online, technical problems, of course, are expected. But some schools in the valley, from high schools to college of the desert, are being hit with issues like hackers or students just not taking classes seriously. One IT professional says hackers who gain access to school systems can effectively lock them out.
Once in their systems, it's basically like changing the locks to your house. They lock you out of your own system and demand ransom to pay for it.
Now, he says these types of attacks are becoming more and more common among higher learning institutions. We're taking a live look now from our Agua Caliente casino cam. That's every time I see it, it's just so striking because of the haze. NBC Palm Springs Chief Meteorologist Mike Everett has a look at what's going on out there. Mike.
So that's a big part of our weather story today. On paper, it looked so good. Temperatures getting into the 70s in the early morning hours. 1 degree below average in August? Are you kidding me? Today's the last day of August, by the way. We're right around the corner from September. We'll talk about that coming up in the full forecast. But it was that low-level moisture that pushed in today and created that haze right around the mouth of the base of the valley there, and kept us from really experiencing what could have been a great day otherwise. We noticed that in the early morning hours. 82 was our low. 76 is the 30-year average for this time of year. Nowhere near record territory on either front there. We are tracking some warming as we're going into this new week. In fact, high pressure will build once again, and that's really going to take the numbers up. Right now, not so bad, though. Currently 102 at Palm Springs International. The wind has stubbornly been pushing in from the southeast for most of the afternoon, and that's what has allowed most of that heat and humidity to push in there. Currently 29%. That's just way too high to be comfortable. We'll fix that. In fact, as we go Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, we're going to see conditions start to dry out as that high pressure expands over top of California and eventually into Nevada. Future winds, well, let's talk about that. We've got that easterly flow. We can get that to switch around tonight. In fact, by the time we get to about 10 o'clock, I'm expecting that diurnal switch that'll bring us northwesterly flow. Nothing that'll be too gusty, but just a little bit of ventilation to get some of that humidity out of here and set us up for a much better looking Tuesday morning. In fact, next 3 days brought to you by Comfort Air shows us taking another valid run at some upper 70s Tuesday. Temperatures will be warmer, though. 108 on Tuesday becomes 110 on Wednesday, becomes 111 on Thursday, and the hits keep on coming. In fact, by the time we get to the weekend, it looks like the entire West Coast could be under a heat wave. I'll tell you what it means for us, and we'll take a look at the big picture coming up.
The governor of Louisiana is warning residents of a long recovery in the wake of Hurricane Laura. The Category 4 storm made landfall Thursday near Lake Charles, packing 150-mile-an-hour winds and a storm surge that reached 15 feet in some areas. The damage is estimated at nearly $20 billion. Dan Sheneman reports.
Days after Hurricane Laura barreled through Louisiana and East Texas, there is utter devastation across the strike zone.
The things that are important to your children and that are important to you are just in shambles, and there's water everywhere, and you think to yourself, how is this reality?
A harsh reality setting in as residents brace for a long recovery.
But we have no electricity. It's really hard to cook things, so food, water are the main things.
Hundreds of thousands are without power. The sweltering heat making matters worse.
Across Louisiana, but particularly in the affected communities, the heat index is going to be between 105 and 108. And this is going to extend for the next few days.
The infrastructure is so damaged it could take months before power is fully restored. Vital water lines are also severely damaged.
Great, thank y'all very much. Now have a good day. Bless y'all.
Communities now pulling together with food drives. The National Guard is also providing aid, while more than 50,000 people have already applied for FEMA assistance.
We got mold growing in the house. We lost all our food and everything. We just need so much help.
To cope, some residents say they are taking it one day at a time.
I pray a lot and I have hope.
Hope for a region battered as it takes its first steps toward recovery. Dan Sheneman, NBC News.
Up next, TikTok has reportedly chosen a bidder for its U.S. operations, but there could be a hang-up in the sale. We'll tell you why. Plus, we remember the life of beloved actor Chadwick Boseman. He died yesterday at the age of 43 after a 4-year battle with colon cancer. We'll have a look at his life and legacy coming up. TikTok has reportedly chosen a bidder for its U.S., New Zealand, and Australian businesses. Microsoft, in partnership with Walmart and Oracle, are the top 2 contenders, but the sale price is expected to be in the range of $20 to $30 billion. The TikTok deal could be slowed or derailed by the Chinese government. TikTok's Chinese parent company, ByteDance, said over the weekend it would need a license from the Chinese government before it can sell. That's because it updated its technology export list to include artificial intelligence used by TikTok. Amazon has received federal approval for its fleet of delivery drones. The FAA announced today that Amazon's Prime Air is ready to expand unmanned package delivery. The certification gives Amazon the ability to carry property on small drones beyond the visual line of sight of the operator. Amazon said deliveries would occur in areas with low population density and packages would weigh about 5 pounds or less. Prime Air aims to drop off packages at customers' doorsteps in 30 minutes or less. What could go wrong? Mike has a look at our forecast and we come back. Mike.
Got a live look for you, Sarah, and so far there don't appear to be any Amazon drones in the sky. That could change going forward. Tracking a delightful breeze, but coming from the wrong direction. We're going to see if we can switch that around, dry the air out a little bit, give us a pleasant Tuesday morning before things really start to heat up. Details in your full forecast when we come back. there's a view you can wrap your arms around. As we're looking off towards the north and northwest tonight, still plenty of haze hanging out right near the mouth of the Banning Pass. But as we look at our Walter Clark cam, seeing some beautiful blue sky. But if you look right near the horizon there, especially off towards the East Valley, still some of that humidity that you can literally see mixed in with some dust as well. As I mentioned earlier, high pressure will build across the region this week, and that's going to lower the available moisture. It's going to dry us out, but it's also going to heat us up as well. So you see the big blue H there that's sitting out in the Pacific? That was our friend this weekend. In fact, that was one of the catalysts that allowed those temperatures to drop down delightfully below average. But as we go into this new week, we're going to see that H make a move right over top of the west here. In fact, by the time that it's done, it sets up shop Friday into Saturday here. This is going to be a very powerful ridge that's going to bring a heat wave to the entire west coast. We're talking about places like Boise and Portland. You know it's going to be hot. Temperatures for everybody will run about 6 to 12 degrees above normal. For us, that's not unusual. We've hit 120, 4 times already this year, but it's the rest of the West that's going to become very hot. One of the issues that we will be tracking, or some records that could be broken across the entire West Coast here, but high fire danger as well. When it gets hot, it obviously gets dry, and we're already battling those fires in Northern California. Take a look at the big picture here. That low pressure system that's been sitting off in the northwest will eventually start to make that move off towards the east. And look at this. There's just literally nothing out there. That's one of the hallmarks of high pressure, and it's going to move itself right on top of us. We'll see some clear skies and less humidity, but we'll see temperatures that will rise. So I've put radar into a loop. This is actually earlier this afternoon. We had that massive cumulus cloud that started to form just towards our south and west, just to the south of La Quinta there. Looked like it had some potential to eventually move over top of the Coachella Valley, but there just wasn't enough available moisture for that to happen. So just basically it was all bark and no bite. As we take a look over the next couple of days here, we will see dew points and relative humidity riding in that mid 50 range as far as the dew points go. Humidity will get down to about 20-25%. So again, not perfectly dry, but not overly humid either. Currently 88 in the Yucca Valley. We've got 98 in Coachella, still holding on to a stubborn 102 at Palm Springs International, 70 at Big Bear, and currently 82 in Idlewild and in Anza. We saw earlier that those winds are continuing to push in from the east. They'll make that switch around tonight around 10 o'clock. Nothing particularly gusty, but some welcome ventilation that will allow us to cool tonight. In fact, we get ourselves into the mid 80s just after midnight tonight, and if we can get that air dry enough, that'll start us on the upper 70s on Tuesday, warm to about 107 by 4 p.m. Palm Springs peaks at 108, 109 in Indio, 102 in Joshua Tree, and some lovely 70s up in Big Bear. Your Comfort Air 7-day forecast shows that heat really starting to build on Friday. In fact, excessive heat warnings will kick in. We're going to stay warm all throughout the weekend, but it looks like it starts to wind down again next Tuesday.
Thank you, Mike. On Friday, the entertainment world was shocked and stunned with the sudden loss of Chadwick Boseman. The actor, best known for his role in Black Panther, died of colon cancer. He was just 43 years old. Chanel Jones has more on his incredible life.
Overnight, MTV's Video Music Awards kicking off with a tribute to Chadwick Boseman.
We dedicate tonight's show to a man whose spirit touched so many. His impact lives forever.
Let's go play around. On the screen, he often portrayed real-life icons. From James Brown in Get On Up.
You got lawyers now.
To former Supreme Court Justice Thurgood Marshall.
No, get me up!
And baseball legend Jackie Robinson.
Wakanda forever!
But it was his role as the fictional Black Panther that made Boseman a hero in his own right. The groundbreaking lead role of a powerful African king and superhero was a first for a big-budget film. The movie would go on to become a cultural phenomenon, something Boseman spoke to Willie about in 2018.
What do you think are people responding to?
I think there's a thirst for these images. There's a thirst for a Black superhero.
Still, the spotlight came as a surprise for the South Carolina native who majored in directing at Howard University.
Never really saw myself doing this. Never really saw myself being on stage or being in front of the camera.
Now, tributes are pouring in for the 43-year-old who died after a 4-year battle with colon cancer, a diagnosis he never spoke about publicly.
The way he handled his life in managing cancer with such humility and grace and dignity lets us all know that he truly was a superhero.
The message from his family sharing the heartbreaking announcement, now the most liked tweet In history, over the weekend, the NBA observing a moment of silence.
We finally had our Black superhero. And to lose that is sad in our community.
On social media, friends and young fans mourn the loss of the on-screen king. In an emotional letter, Black Panther director Ryan Coogler writing in part, Boseman was an epic firework display. In African cultures, we often refer to loved ones that have passed on as ancestors. It is with a heavy heart that I have to reckon with the fact that Chad is an ancestor now. President Barack Obama also writing, to be young, gifted, and Black, to use that power to give them heroes to look up to do it all while in pain. What a use of his years.
We all know what it's like to be told that there is not a place for you to be featured, yet you are young, gifted, and Black.
While battling cancer privately, Boseman filmed 7 movies, a courageous act that perhaps prepared him for his greatest role.
We all have a superhero in us. We feel like we can do things that are beyond, comprehension.
Our Desert Pass is brought to you by Mike Thompson RV. Your adventure starts here.
Well, Hollywood and the desert have long been tied together, and with Hollywood comes scandals. One of those scandals came in the very early days of Hollywood, and here in our desert, here's Gina Lamont.
Think George Clooney, or Brad Pitt, Cary Grant, or Clark Gable, and then triple it, and you get an idea just how big a star Rudolf Valentino was. In the days before talkies, Valentino was our first movie heartthrob. He was a sensation, he was sexual, and he was controversial. And like many of our stars today, he was scandalous.
In 1922, Rudolf Valentino came to Palm Springs following his marriage in Mexicali to Natasha Rambova, who was a set and costume designer in Hollywood.
The problem was, Valentino couldn't legally marry Natasha Rambova, real name Winifred Hugnut. Though he was divorced at the time, California law said you had to be divorced for at least a year before you could remarry. In 1919, just before the rise of his career, Valentino impulsively married actress Jean Acker, who was involved with actresses Grace Darman and Alla Nazmova. Acker became involved with Valentino in part to remove herself from the lesbian love triangle. Quickly regretting the marriage, she locked Valentino out of their room on their wedding night. The couple separated soon thereafter, and the marriage was never consummated. The couple, though, remained legally married until 1921. The same year, Valentino married Rambova, which is bigamy.
There was a big deal about it. Like, the law was actually seeking witnesses, and they were going to really prosecute Valentino for this really big deal.
The Valentinos spent their honeymoon in Palm Springs at the Palm Springs Hotel. The hotel at that time was under the ownership of sisters Cornelia and Florilla White. Florilla, a friend of the newlyweds, hosted the couple in her cottage.
And she said that they never consummated, that actually Florilla was in the bedroom with Winifred or Natasha Rambova the night of their wedding. So they never actually consummated it. It wasn't a real wedding, so he couldn't be found guilty.
But as it turns out, the Sheik actually did spend a lot of time here in the desert, though not with any of his wives.
Valentino was a frequent visitor to Palm Springs. He was actually pretty good friends with a hermit that lived in Palm Canyon named Pester. We have a few photographs of them together. Pester is usually playing a homemade guitar of some sort, and they're in front of Pester's little hut that he had in Palm Canyon, and they seem to be pretty good friends. He came out to Palm Springs many times.
So was Valentino a bigamist? Or were the marriages of the movie star all just a front? No one really knows. Rudolf Valentino died in 1926 at the age of 31, just about the time silent pictures and silent picture stars were fading away. But we do know the stars were already coming to the desert in 1921, and so were their scandals.
Brighter Side of the News is brought to you by Holland RV, located off the I-10 at Washington.
For the first time ever, guests at Disney's Magic Kingdom can wear their Halloween costumes during regular park hours. This is Disney World. From September 15th to October 31st, guests can participate in the holiday fun with costumes, themed foods, and merchandise. There's some restrictions, though. No one older than 14 can wear a full-faced costume. Also, all guests must still wear a face covering during their visit, so like a mask. But I think we're learning that I didn't know you couldn't wear a costume to Disney World or Disneyland, but Disneyland, of course, is still closed. But Interesting. Thank you so much for joining us here tonight at 6. We'll see you tonight at 11.